There's an idea that I think we like to carry around that some people are just talented at a thing and others are not. Now, talent is a real thing, but a person's initial talent at something doesn't necessarily reflect that same person's highest potential. Half the time, natural talent is more so a reflection of natural interest in a given thing. If you like sports generally, you will probably be pretty good at any sport you try for the first time. And you will get better at that sport without trying very hard because you're doing it because it's fun for you, regardless of whether or not you're already good at it. If going into it, your interest in it is based on whether or not you're already good at the game, then you're missing the point. We will never be perfect, but we can easily be good. You can waste your days chasing perfection, only to see it always out of reach, or you can shoot for good. My ex-wife used to say something that I actually liked. She would say, "It only needs to be a 90% job." I like that because getting to 90% is pretty darn good, and it's really the last 10% that will break you. There's something I heard on another podcast. I think it was Alex Hormozzi's, but regardless of where I heard it, it was insightful. Somebody apparently asked a group of people that were new to pottery to take all the time they needed to make the best possible piece of pottery that they could. Probably a cup or something simple like that. They then asked another group of newcomers not to worry about how nice to make them, but to make 100 of them. By the way, I could be telling this story wrong, as it's a vague memory, but the point here is that the people asked to pump out 100 so-so pieces of pottery had incredibly superior pieces to the other group once they got to 100. The expectation that we should be able to do something perfect is one of our greatest flaws. Not only that, but expecting that we ourselves can be some version of perfect is an even greater flaw. Going down that road is a path to a kind of hell, which I think is ironic because presumably we're pursuing that perfection in an effort to be good. So maybe it's God's way of giving us a consequence for having so much pride that we think we can be perfect without Him. I don't know. I'm not sure perfection even exists for us simple mortals. It's so easy to look at another person and to see how they're doing things wrong. Even the worst criminal on death row would probably have an easy time pointing out Mother Teresa's flaws if you got to know her. Professional sports is one of the best examples. The worst player on that field could likely outpace the most athletic of us in the stands, yet most of us could tell you who we think is terrible at the game and why. The pressure that we place on each other drives us to this kind of perfection. Sometimes we take for granted that something that has become simple for us may be something another person just doesn't know yet. So we foolishly expect perfection from them because we can do it that way. I'm sure just about every person that's ever been a child has experienced a parent's frustration when they couldn't do a task that their parent thought should be simple. It makes us feel bad and often makes us give up on things a little too early. We become afraid to try things unless we think we can do it perfectly the first time. And it isn't even the parent's fault half the time because we put this pressure on ourselves just as much as anyone else. One of my children tends to panic really easily if something doesn't go right or they mess something up. Since he could talk, he's been this way. When I first started playing catch with him, he'd get so upset when he couldn't catch the ball. He was probably only 3 at that point. What I ended up telling him that seemed to work was, it's okay because you're learning. It's part of the game. It was pretty cute because for like a year or so after that, every time that he missed that catch, he'd run after the ball and he'd say, it's okay. It's part of the game. Growing up, my family liked to go skiing every year after Christmas. And to give some context, my father has always been particularly good at skiing, as he actually spent a few years living at a ski resort when he was in high school, and he was an avid skier through his college years. And to put things mildly, I was regularly challenged to improve. I can't say I enjoyed the process, but there is one line that my dad would use to encourage myself and my siblings that had some real wisdom to it. He would kind of praise us if we crashed in the process of taking a risk. And his line was always, if you aren't falling down, then you're not learning. Life can be a lot better if we expect to make a few mistakes. It's easier to forgive yourself when you know that those mistakes are part of the process of living. One of the most difficult and unhappy periods of my life was a time when I was holding myself up to a standard of perfection. Every mistake I made along the way made me carry far more guilt than what was appropriate for those mistakes. Learning also becomes so much better when we plan on being terrible at the beginning. There's an idea that I think we like to carry around that some people are just talented at a thing and others are not. Now, talent is a real thing, but a person's initial talent at something doesn't necessarily reflect that same person's highest potential. Half the time, natural talent is more so a reflection of natural interest in a given thing. If you like sports generally, you will probably be pretty good at any sport you try for the first time. And you will get better at that sport without trying very hard because you're doing it because it's fun for you, regardless of whether or not you're already good at it. If going into it, your interest in it is based on whether or not you're already good at the game, then you're missing the point. I thought about joining the football team when I was in high school because the glory of being a star athlete appealed to me. I'm glad I didn't do it though, because I wouldn't have been doing it because I liked it. I would have languished in mediocrity or worse because I just didn't enjoy it enough for its own sake. We keep ourselves from a lot of joy in life because we aren't willing to be bad at anything, or we cannot fathom the idea of failure. Success in any endeavor usually goes to the people that have fallen down the most. Learning and growing seems less a process of comprehending a thing and more a process of screwing up enough to learn how to stop screwing up. I believe the most miserable people in the world are often, if not always, the ones that are the biggest perfectionists. Sometimes it's okay for something to be good enough and to let yourself stop thinking on it. Overthinking things is a crutch we use. It can help us make decisions that might be 10% better than if we just followed our first instinct. But more often it just keeps us from action at all. Whereas if we just go for it, we can fail a few times and become 100% better in short order. 90% is good enough. Even 80% is probably good enough. And, being honest here, even a 50% job will at least get the ball rolling on whatever you're trying to do. Trying to be perfect reminds me of that Greek myth of Icarus, whose father made him wings to fly and warned him not to go too high to avoid the sun melting the wax that held those wings together. Of course, Icarus ignored his father, and he flew too close to the sun, and his wings fell apart, and he fell into the sea and drowned. I don't think there's a better metaphor for perfectionism than drowning, because that is what perfectionism feels like. You can never be good enough, and the more you struggle, the more you wear yourself down until you finally breathe in that water and are ultimately defeated as you slowly sink down to the bottom. If you're not falling down in life, then you are not learning. Maybe it's time to focus on being good enough, not perfect.